So it's my pleasure now to introduce Domenico Vito, who works for lots of different institutions. So he works at San Diego State University, and he's going to talk about the SDGs that I mentioned to you, and we'll go into them into detail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. For me, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here because I was a student, a PhD student, as you were a few years ago, and from there it started my path also on what I will talk about, the SDGs. So first of all, I want to thank you, really, the organizers, Carmelo, Arti, also for inviting me and to have this opportunity that for you, I think is unique. As Arti said, the field of biomedical engineering that also deal with global health and sustainability, I can say that could be the innovation of the future. The biomedical engineer, you know, because of course you choose this path of study, this faculty, is very in deep in innovation. But innovation of the next centuries, you will see also from the situation that we are living, could be vary in sustainability and also in the path of the Sustainable Development Goal. And with this, I start my presentation. So, okay. I don't know if the thing is working. Okay, perfect. I will introduce a brief my laboratory, the Metabolism of Cities Living Lab that is located in San Diego State University, but it's spread everywhere in the world. We have several collaboration with Italy, of course, with Latin America, Africa, and also other parts of Europe. And basically, the idea of the Metabolism of Cities Living Lab is to use the data and create knowledge to localize the SDGs. We will see what does it mean, localize, and how this is connected to SDGs. So here, as I said, create knowledge, share knowledge, apply knowledge, create new data from data, basically, that can help to implement what are the goals that are inside the SDGs. The basic idea, as the name it is that the city can be seen as a living organism. So here we have, again, the concept of health, the concept of living. And this is related also to the concept of One Health. We will discover what it will be in the next slide. I will go fastly on the topic. So the structure of my presentation will be like a path. I want to guide you through the introduction of this framework, this international framework of the SDGs. So we will start from what are the SDGs, where they are born, when we started to talk about sustainability, and then gradually we will in deep into how to use data for monitor the SDGs, and also how this data can be related to health. That's our topic. So these are the Sustainable Development Goals. First of all, I want just to check with a quick raise of hands. How many of you did heard about the Sustainable Development Goals before? Just quickly, raise your hand. I want to. Okay. Quite, but not so many. Yeah, because usually in the biomedical field, the Sustainable Development Goals are not so, we can say, transmitted, and not so they are not in our current curriculum, but they will be starting from today, I think. But let's start from the beginning, when the humanity started to talk about sustainability. It was like 1972. There was like an energetic crisis like it was now, and especially the price of oil was very rising. And in that period, you have to imagine that was like the second part of the post-war development. So the population were increasing, there was like wellness and so on. And the production also was very, very high in industries and so on. There were richness in the countries, or at least in the developed countries. But the question was that the question that was raised by a group of like thinkers that were called the Club of Rome: would be possible to grow as we were growing in 1972 forever without a limit, or there is some limit due to the fact that at least Earth is a limited planet. And so this was commissioned to a group of expert economists and mathematicians of the Massachusetts Institute of University, the study to understand if there are limits to the growth of populations. And here is come the first chance in which we can say the humankind has like put the question of the sustainability. Just to like give you the result of this study, I think that to now for us is trivial, but for the time was not so trivial. In fact, the first result of this study was like not considered even by the scientific community, is that it's not possible to grow without any limit in a limited planet like it is Earth. And so that was important to consider this also in the economical models, in the growth models that were implemented also by the states and by the policies. And okay, this report was not so successful in the, we can say, big audience, but at least at the UN level was like considered. And from there it started all the path that then bring to the Sustainable Development Goals. Another, like I say, milestone on sustainability has been the Brundtland report. Here I cut the part of the story that regards the so many conferences that the UN has taken to discuss about sustainability and so on. I'm just listing the basic points that help us to understand where we are here. And so, as I said, the one milestone of the story of sustainability has been the Brundtland report. So this commission that was like led by Dr. Brundtland came out with the first definition of sustainability. So sustainability is a development, or sustainable development. We can say that the definition was more related to sustainable development. Sustainable development is the development of communities that can lead the next generation to have the same probability of wealth, health, and so on, from as well as the previous generation. So the very concept of sustainability was based on the concept of intergenerational equity. We talked before about health equity. Equity is a word that inside, we can say, the UN system is very used, sometimes also abused. But the goal is that the equity needs to be achieved among generations if we are talking about sustainability. And if you can reason a while on this definition, it's not just regarding generation, it's regarding properly the limits of growth. So a growth is possible of a community, a growth of the cities and so on, if the resources that are consumed are in a way inside a limit that can allow, for example, the resource themselves to regenerate and the resources themselves to be left to the next generation. This key point was also important in another stepstone of in general sustainability, but especially on climate change. Climate change, I think that now is very known also among the ones that maybe are not dealing with climate change. But just to let you figure out, since 1992, that was the Earth Summit of Rio, every year all the states are gathering inside the UN framework on climate change convention to discuss about what's going on with the climate change. And the first time that they did that, they talk about sustainability. And they take the Brundtland report definition of sustainability properly to define how we want a sustainable world. So the discussion was going on also at the UN level, and before the current SDGs, there were set also other goals from for the development of the humankind that was, like, of course, set at the UN level. And so a first roadmap for, like, achieving some sustainability goals were the Millennium Development Goals that were set in 2000, in the year 2000, in the millennium, of course, for the year 2015. So I will just show here you can see also some of the outputs of this process of planning, we can say, of the future of humanity. So some goals have been achieved, of course, but the very difference of the MDGs regards the SDGs, that was that these goals were just goals. There were, like, commitments, there were, like we can say, objective, but without a measure, without something that, like, can tell, okay, we are okay at this level, we are at a certain stage, or not. So the assessment, we can say, of the goals was done only at the end, when like the strategy was like reach the timeline, basically. So we are now arriving there to the SDGs, just like a step before the 2015, the year that the SDGs has been ratified. That was the Johannesburg Declaration on Sustainable Development. This I put here as a milestone because basically from here was born, like, the agreement for the Agenda 2030. So we can say that was this Johannesburg Declaration was like the basis for building the Sustainable Development Goals. Hola. So another raised hand. How many of you did know about the planetary boundaries? No one. Okay. Yeah, I can expect that because this is an important thing, but not so well known as the Sustainable Development Goals and the other framework that we are going to know. But why they are important for the Sustainable Development Goals? Because the planetary boundaries have been like a tool that has been designed by, like, an agency, like an assessment agency based in Stockholm, to define scenarios. So these planetary boundaries are also used into the SDG, like we can say, framework, to set up scenarios, to understand like the probability that an action can lead to a result or to an output. And especially this is like useful for two ways: to assess the risk and eventually to assess the strategy. And the planetary boundaries nowadays are like an integral part of all the instruments that we have to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And here we are at 2015. 2015 has been one year that I think that most of you have seen. Like most of you, maybe you were like a little bit younger and so on, but was very, very important. Very important because a lot of things happened in 2015. First of all, for our discussion, the Sustainable Development Goals have been like adopted in September 2015, but not only. The Paris Agreement in December that was dealing with climate change was ratified by the states. And we can say the agenda of the Paris Agreement and the agenda of the Sustainable Development Goals are something that are very, very, very connected. So today we are talking about SDGs, but you have to consider that when we are talking about the SDGs, we are also make some, you can say, efforts for contribute to the global crisis of climate change. And also here I listed other agreements, mostly related, for example, to risk prevention, to natural hazard, and so on, as well as the Sendai framework. I will not mention, I just mentioned that just to say that this year was very crucial for sustainability. And here we are with the SDGs. So I said before that we can say the UN, the humankind have done before an effort to design goals for development, to stay into the, like we can say, sustainable development, the MDGs. And what's the difference between the MDGs and SDGs? First of all, the number, okay? MDGs were just 8, SDGs are 17. Secondly, SDGs has provided, together with the goals themselves, also a framework of sub-targets and indicator. And basically, the idea behind was that was not just like a sort of charity, because you have to see MDGs were like very addressed to end poverty and hunger and so on. So less was related to development. With the change from MDGs to SDGs, we have also a vision of future. And in fact, during the meetings of the SDGs assessment, also the agenda 2030, so an agenda for development till a certain deadline, was ratified. So there was a plan for have a sustainable growth with some objective that were, of course, integrating also the previous one, but not only, okay? There was something related, for example, to policies, to how to address the action of the industrial sector, of the communities, and so on. And these are the SDGs. Here in this slide, I just wanted to have like a big picture of them. And you can see health, as we have seen before, but also several others of them are dealing with health. And we will see this point also in the further slide. But yeah, here just to give you a framework on what they are. They are very, we can say, ambitious, no? Because some of them is like peace and justice, innovation in infrastructure, reduce inequalities. So there's we can say, a lot of work to do. But as I said, the very difference between the MDGs that were very concentrated to provide, we can say, distribute wellness to humankind. Here we can see also a plan for development, no, for a next future. But why the SDGs? Why we need such kind of framework? Why just not do the things as they are and so on? Because it's important that in a finite planet, in a planet that has some limits, some boundaries, and in which planet we are all, and we have the dignity to have all the same access to health, education, and so on, it's important to design policies into a multilateral way. I will tell this word multilateral because it's very important for the SDGs, but in general, I think for every action, because it's very dealing with collaboration. Multilateralism into the UN framework means that all the states need to agree together towards same directions, same goals, like an integrated framework. And in fact, the SDGs can be also grouped into, we can say, areas of action that are areas for defined policies, as I said before, that can stand into the 5 Ps framework. You can see here these 5 P of development. And these 5 P are people, planet, prosperity, partnership, and peace. That's funny. Sometimes into the UN environment, they find nice acronym to realize big concept. But the very important that you can see from these 5 P's that all the goals are addressed for like an equitable and sustainable development of all the humanity. Hola. Yeah, we were talking about health before, no? And like the trivial response on the question, which are the SDGs that are related to health? The basic, you can say the 3, no? SDG 3 is good health and well-being. But the very interesting thing that is very connected to the policy mindset is that indeed health can be associated not only to SDG 3, but to several SDGs. And I cited here a study from the Barcelona Institute for Global Health that tried to address for each SDGs which are the connection with health. Just think about a city, no? I come from the metabolism of cities, and I will talk to you about the health of cities. Think about, for example, of unsustainable production. SDG 12 is related to sustainable production and consumption. If this goal is not addressed, if the production is unsustainable, is, for example, pollutant, how many effects on health we can have? Air pollution, there are tons of studies that demonstrate the effect of air pollution for chronic disease and also burdens for the health system. So when we are talking about health, we can say that health is connected to several of the SDGs, not only just 3, or here there was also 11 as mentioned as like the first ones. And there are several frameworks. This one is one possible that you can find in literature that's called health in whole policies. But there is also the concept and framework of One Health, but that we will discover later. So I tell that the difference between the MDGs and the SDGs was the fact that in a way there was some indicators, numbers, so we like them, no? So we as engineers, we are happy that now we have a framework with the possibility to put a number inside. But this was important because was not just talking about sustainability in a general way. If we were with Greta, we can say sustainability was not just a blah, 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 but a measurable thing. So the framework of SDGs contribute to measurability of sustainability. And here you can find a typical structure of an SDGs. Here there is like SDG 12, and the SDGs, so in total there are 17 goals, 117 targets, and almost, because sometimes they change also the number, 241 indicators. So something that you need to assess to measure your progress towards the goals. And the targets can be organized in sub-targets also, and to each target there is one or more indicators. And usually after the acceptance that was in 2015, the SDGs are continuously monitored. There is like a commission at the UN, that is the UN Statistical Commission, that is deputed to properly measure and monitor the SDGs at the state level, but also at the global level. Here, just another example, more, we can say, easy to understand. That's proper SDG 3. You can see now there is the big goal, the main achievement, and also the sub-target. And each sub-target has like indicators and so on. So you can understand like the power of this framework. If you are, for example, a policymaker, if you are also a professional, you can have a framework to refer to in order to see, okay, I want to do the things in a proper way. I want to do the things in a sustainable way. I understand that we are in a finite planet. Okay, there is something that I can refer to in order to address my action, and that has been agreed globally. Remember the word multilateralism. Yeah, but of course, not all indicators are like possible for SDGs. Of course, the official indicators of the set of the UN SDGs have been selected with some criteria. Properly, in order to consider that the measurability of sustainability need to act at a different level. Okay, the SDGs have been like ratified at the UN level, so it's a very high level, but of course they need to be implemented also at the local level or eventually also at the intermediate level. So it's not easy to consider like how to measure this kind of thing. But the current framework has some particular features that like let one indicator feasible for the framework or not. The link to the target. Of course, if we have a target, the indicator need to be linked to the target. Policy relevance. So the indicator that I choose need to be relevant for the policies. For example, mortality, the child mortality is one that is very relevant to address policies. And applicability at appropriate level. Of course, if I try to measure a scale that is not possible, this led to my indicator to be unuseful for my goals. And properly on these different like subdivision in scale, subscale, and so on, the indicator can be classified also on the level and on the pertainance, for example, to the topic or to the SDGs themselves. Here you can find a possible subdivision. So there are national indicators that are, of course, prerogative of the national level, global indicators that are pertaining to the global level, thematic indicators that are like figuring out just a particular scope. For example, one of the particular P's of the 5P framework that we saw before. And gradually we are like going into our, we can say, our field, the data, no? Why data for SDGs? Now that I give you a little bit an idea of the indicator frameworks and so on, I think that you can start just now to understand why it's important to have data for like implement and like create coherence of the SDGs at the different level. But okay, this is like the trivial response, but together with the response, we have like some problems. Because which kind of data and where we have to take this data? Previously, we have seen a source of data that, for example, is our words of data that is very useful, is like very complete, and they are like adjourning very much and is one possible source. But for example, in a middle or low income country where there's no connection, how we can get that data? And so like we have to consider this idea that the data need to be provided to this statistical structure. So this slide also to understand that with the framework of SDGs, we created a statistical structure that can allow us to create models, create like prevision, create scenarios, but with numbers. But of course, numbers sometimes are a problem. In this table, I just show how is the process of monitoring of the SDGs. As you can imagine, I told you about the different levels, no, in which the SDGs can be implemented. You can say, I reduce the child mortality at the national level, or I reduce the child mortality at the regional level, or at a, I don't know, town level, whatever. But to assess these different levels, there is also like a chain of monitoring, we can say. And this is the typical chain of a region. No, if you think about Europe, this is related to Europe. There is like the national assessment of the SDGs that is done usually by agencies or by voluntary assessment. Then the assessment is bring it at the EU level. The EU level is bring to the regional level. So there is an agency that is disposing guidelines on how to measure and so on and so forth, since to reach the UN level. Especially UN level, the monitoring is deputed to the UN SDGs Statistical Commission for the, we can say, statistical part, but also to the high-level political forum on SDGs, that is like we can say the policy level. So the statistical is one more technical for like produce the reports for assessment at the technical level. The policy level, so the decision-making level, is done by the high-level political forum. Here, this like slide, just to let you understand the problem that I figured out you before, the availability of data. And as any problem, this is seemingly a problem, but also an opportunity. I just tell you that to now, with also our technological advancement, with all the big data management techniques and so on, we are stealing still the 78% of the data that are required for our set of indicators. So there is quite a lot, okay? But this, of course, is, as I say, a lack, but there is also an opportunity, because we can find new ways to measure and new ways to obtain data. And as we were mentioning before, this is a very open field, also for us, no? Also for us bioengineers that can deal with the data and also sometimes with difficult data. And properly to like help this availability of data, the UN Statistical Commission has defined also the indicator has classified the indicator on the basis of their availability of data and methodology to measure. So you can imagine that maybe some set of data are more easy to obtain, and the methodology can be easily assessed. And so there is like the tier 1 type of indicator. Tier 2 is when we have like the availability of data, but there is no methodology agreed. And tier 3 that are the one that we need to still work a lot, because there are no data available and no methodology assessed or agreed at the international level. Another type of classification, here I'm putting some, we can say, classification also of the indicator that can help to like assess and monitor, is the leave no one behind indicators. This is particularly interesting also for us, for our activity, because this set of indicators are the ones that are very related to the concept of equity. Leave no one behind is a key word to understand, to let understand the fact that when we are talking about development and sustainable development, is not the development of sustainable development or certain part of the world or of certain countries or certain community, but it needs to requires that no one is left behind. So everyone needs to participate to this sustainable development. And these indicators are the ones that can be useful to understand where an action, a policy, an innovation can go in that direction, okay? And properly regarding assessment, here there is an example of assessment that is done by OECD, that is just like, I don't know if you know this acronym, but is we can say the organization that is supporting the development country to understand the the development level, the economies, and so on. And this is an example of assessment. We tell before that the very strong point of the SDG framework is that it allows to measure, it allows to give some representation of the state of art, we can say, and on the progress of the achievement. And this is an example. I put here this slide to let you understand how it's possible to use this indicator and this data to make some assessments. Okay. Just to let you figure out and let you read these graphics. Basically, the more achievement it is, more near to, we can say, the border it is, more near to the SDGs it is. And also, if you make, we can say, the integral in the parts that are pertaining a certain P, you can see there is also the classification on planet, prosperity, and peace. You can have also an assessment on the state of which direction we are and which state we are for example, obtain prosperity, or for saving the planet, or for sustain the people to living on the planet. Another very interesting thing, as I said before, is that SDGs are very relevant to provide policies and support policies, also at the health level. Okay, and this is another framework that is developed properly by OECD that is helping to connect the just measure, just indicators, we can say, with some evaluation on the policies. So if, for example, I want to reduce the mortality of the mothers and of the children in a certain country, okay, now I measure the state, and okay, I want to make a policy, make some action that want to change this number. Okay, how I can evaluate this policy into a defined framework. And these tools are very useful to, we can say, elaborate metadata on the basic data of the SDGs. Yeah. Okay. I will go just quickly to the end, just to let you see also which is the Italian situation, and also some case studies. For example, this is a type of assessment that is done in Italy. In Italy, I said you before that at the national level, usually there are agencies or private entities that are making the assessment and the measurement of the SDGs indicators. And in Italy, we have Istat that is one of the strength of the best in doing this kind of work. And I really suggest to you to read the report of Istat every year. Is that they are going to assess the state of the indicators and so on. And this is also a very interesting source of data. I will go quickly to the case studies, just to let you see. Here there are the source of data that usually are used to make that kind of assessment that I showed before. They are very different. There are official data, commercial data, and so on. And one interesting thing for us by engineering, that nowadays also wearable data that are coming from wearable devices have been considered also as an official source for monitor and measure. And with the data on SDGs, we can play a lot also to assess, to, as I say, make also meta-analysis. And here I put some examples that are also available on the book regarding the use of machine learning, for example, among the indicator to make maps and make advanced analysis on the SDGs indicator data. Very important, and then I'm going to close, is the role of citizen science. In the scenario where we are lacking of data, involving communities and citizens also to provide data with wearables, with smartphones and so on, is very, very interesting. It's an open field that have a lot of innovation inside. Here an example of one activity that we are doing at the Metabolism of Cities Living Lab regarding SDGs 14 and we can say the marine protection. we involved a community in Nicaragua to collect data about the trash in beaches. We done a beach litter. We collect data on the type, on the position, and so on, in order to assess and localize the SDGs. When I say localize, is that I mentioned I want to intend properly this. Make the SDGs local, make the SDGs at the local level. Here is a dashboard that we developed to measure the SDGs at the city level. And another, for example, properly closing on health, we did an assessment of COVID feedbacks on restriction measure through social media. And this is also, for example, social media data are another way that nowadays are available to assess SDGs, and in which we can also use advanced technique in order to extract information and so on. I will finish. Okay, just this, the One Health concept. One Health means health of all the living beings, the planet, the human beings, and also the animals. We have shown in practice with COVID, where a lack of biodiversity has led to the zoonosis and to the spillover phenomena. And the lack of health for an ecosystem has impacted on the big pandemic. So a lack of health for humanity. If you want to in deep, we are also organizing conferences and events to talk about One Health concept, but this is very interesting, in my opinion, for the biomedical field, to rethink health system and health technologies into the One Health framework. That's it. My conclusion, I will just let you read, but basically say that, as also Arti has mentioned, there is an open field for how we engineer and for the scientific field inside the framework of SDGs, and also with the use of data of SDGs. Thank you very much for the attention.